Okay, well, I see that we are live, and in the interest of time, and since I have my awesome guest already punctual and on here with us, I'll go ahead and get kicked off and started for today's segment. I am Juliette Abdel. Welcome to KUHS Denver, your host for today's segment, and the segment's every Friday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and that is Health and Wealth with the Self-Care Boss, aka me. For those of you that don't know, I am a title holder, International Ms. Rocky Mountain 2023. I've held many others in the past, and that is my personal outlet to hold myself accountable for self-care. Along the journey, I've met some awesome business owners and made some great collaboration and partnerships, and some of them I'm able to weave into our conversation around all things health and wellness, particularly self-care, looking at mental, emotional, social, and physical well-being. We've had guests that have also come in to talk about wealth, financial wealth in particular, and the areas that you can impact yourself personally and hopefully thrive through that. Now, every week I always touch on something that's happened during the week or something that's happened the day of to me. I find that if you faced a challenge, then others have as well. Now, today's item that I'm going to touch on is a personal challenge that directly I faced this week, but it's something that we highlighted on our segment last week, and that was about Turkey and Syria and some of the earthquakes that have taken place in those regions. That they experienced two 7.8 in magnitude earthquakes that they've had, and they're still finding victims of the earthquakes. I believe they found even babies under the rubble that have still managed to survive the wintry conditions, and it's been a devastating situation right now to even watch and follow. So if you don't know about it, please take the time to learn more. Over 14,000 that have been their lives have been taken, and there are efforts all over the U.S. to help. So wherever you are, I encourage you to find an organization. Generally, a Turkish organization or Turkish community is trying to rush to support those organizations that are providing aid. And if you are in Colorado, this evening at about 6 o'clock over in Wash Park, there will be a candlelight vigil for the victims of those earthquakes that are no longer with us. But know that if you follow me or can find me on all things social media, I've created a nice list for you of ways that you can donate, not just your time, but your funding and other apparel and items that they're in need of. So that was a somber note I wanted to start on before I kick off our segment for today. Today's segment is one that's with a health guest. Now, you know that sometimes my guests cross over in both, and this time we're really focused on health, even though she is a co-founder and owner of the business that she's here talking with us about. Now, Katie, I'm very excited to have you on today's segment with me. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. This is very fun.
Yeah, so excited. So for those people that may not know who you are, Katie, can you tell them a little bit about yourself and your brand?
Yeah, I mean, I am a mom of two. I have two little cute babies, and they're currently, challenging my cortisol levels. Owner of Joy Women's Wellness, and I actually work with my husband, so that can be fun as well. He works on the men's side of our brand called Blokes, and I do more for the women's side called Joy. And what we do, honestly, simply is really just try to help women look and feel, more importantly, feel their best.
Absolutely. And I know that's how you and I found each other. I was not looking my best. I was not feeling my best. Had triggered a lot of my own autoimmune issues that were not holding off, and it reflected in myself, in my skin, in my body, and my overall wellness, and you helped me overcome that, and you still help me stay consistently well. So I'm very excited to have you on here to share more about Joy Women's Wellness for folks. Now, I do want to touch on maybe some of the services or areas of focus that you focus on in your business. And one of those, I know I follow you religiously on all things social media, so I see you posting often on various topics, and there are three that I know we want to try and highlight today. The first one I had no idea about until I started really reading and seeing some of your videos, and that was perimenopause. I've always heard the term menopause, and that's later on in your life, right? Like you don't need to worry about it until you're after your childbirth age and you're 50 plus. But then there's this other term that I've heard more and more lately. Can you speak to both of these and how we as women should know more about ourselves and why it's so important?
Yeah, to me, it's absolutely crazy that we don't. Like, the first basic step is just understanding what we go through, right? Half of the population goes through this if they're lucky enough to get that far in life, right? And to your point, when I was little, I thought, oh, menopause, don't worry about that. That's when you're old. But now, it's staring at me, and what's even more interesting is that 10 years before menopause is something called perimenopause, and in that time frame, so much is happening inside our bodies and with our hormones, and it's a time where we really need to pay attention, and we really need to understand what's going on and understand what we can do to help with pesky symptoms that come about, and that could be something as easy as just little lifestyle changes, but it's so important in my mind to just understand it, because people literally think they're going crazy. Like, they have no idea. They're like, I'm just going nuts. I'm just nuts. And maybe you are nuts, but it also could be your hormones.
Yeah, and so are there some signs where it's exasperated even more? As women, we naturally have this fluctuation in our hormones on a monthly basis, particularly around our cycle, and what we eat sometimes triggers different emotions and all sorts of things. But are there glaring factors that you're like, this is definitely someone that's going through a perimenopausal state?
Yeah, I think I see it every day in and day out. I mean, everyone, there are outliers, and everyone's journey is a little bit different, but for the most part, when we are in our 40s, our progesterone is the first hormone that kind of changes. So instead of cycling, up and down every month like normal, our progesterone starts to lower. And progesterone is very important for being calm, having a good mood, being able to sleep. So the first thing that I see is really women not, waking up at 2, 3, not being able to go back to sleep. Their mind is racing. They're feeling, maybe they're starting to get anxiety attacks, or maybe they're just really short with their partner or their coworkers. So those are like the typical signs when your progesterone is just on its way downhill, on your way to menopause.
Yeah, that makes entire sense. Now, there are some things I'm sure that you try and emphasize to people before they hit 40. So before you hit that time period that it could be triggered, things that they can be doing holistically leading up to it. Because, and I think more and more around health, we're starting to learn that really by, 30, you should start taking better care of yourself, and you should be focused more on muscle building and in eating and developing the habits that you need to, because everything starts going downhill from 30. What can you say around that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I certainly took advantage of my health when I was younger, and when I look back at things I did in college and in my 20s, oh my gosh, my poor body and mind. So I do think it's important as we age to get wiser about what's going on and what our body needs, because at some point your body will certainly push back and make it known that it's not acceptable anymore. So, one thing I like to do or say is that besides the lifestyle factors, it's really a great idea if you want to check in with your body and get a lab test, do some comprehensive testing, just kind of see where your baselines are. So that's kind of a good idea if you're starting to think about, like, you're being preventative and looking at, what's going on, or maybe you have a symptom here or there. That can really tell you a lot about what's working and then also what's not.
Yeah. For those people that just think that getting, and when you talk about getting tested, blood work and checking your blood levels and reading the numbers and really reading to understand, I think sometimes we only think that should happen with a once annual physical, or maybe when we're sick. But that's not the case. You don't even need to necessarily go into a doctor's office to get that done, as you're suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, we feel like people should really own their own health journey and take control, and you decide. You're in the driver's seat, so you decide what's right for you. But the labs that we prescribe, our doctor prescribed, but we make it easy and allow you to walk into a lab core, or we actually also have some home lab devices that don't get as deep in terms of markers, but they're pretty easy to take at home with just a finger prick. So there's lots of different options depending on what you need.
Yeah. Well, and I think for the busy environment that we're in, right? Like we all wear so many hats, as you were sharing early on. You're a co-founder of Joy Women's Wellness. You've got 2 kiddos. You've got all these things on your plate, and so shuffling your schedule around to make it into a waiting room or to make it somewhere can sometimes be discouraging. I mean, I know I myself, when I'm like transferred numerous times to try and reach a physician or a specialist, just like, geez, it shouldn't be this hard, right? And so then you end up forgetting about it, or you flag it mentally, but the flag falls with everything else. So I love that approach that you're sharing, and that's, you've got all these locations, why don't you leverage them to fit your schedule, still following recommendation and advice of a prescribed lab that you can then follow up on. So,
yeah, we try to limit the amount of excuses that you can make. We actually can send a nurse right to your home if excuses is your game. We can get around that too. So we actually can send a licensed phlebotomist or nurse right to your home to get that blood drawn too.
That is awesome. I had no idea you were doing this. So outside of being able to go somewhere, yeah, you really have no excuse of not checking your labs. Now,
right.
So we share that labs are important and they're good indicators. How do you see that they're good indicators? Like, what are you looking for in the labs for someone that doesn't necessarily assess and hasn't faced any health challenges, right? So they may not see the relevancy or understand what can be interpreted from it.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what tests you're actually running, the most basic one we do is still pretty comprehensive, and it has about 47 markers, and then we go up to a test that's about 77. So there's all different options, but we like to test obviously hormones. We also like to do thyroid and metabolic health. And then you can dig deeper and do inflammation markers. You can do all your vitamins and minerals, kidney and liver function, electrolytes. So you can get quite detailed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is a lot. We don't expect you to know what to do with that information. So we follow up with, a visit with your provider or coach to go through things. And then we also have these really cool functional health reports that kind of summarize it in an easy to understand way. That kind of help recommend different changes for you.
And would you say that, for someone who's starting out on their health journey, and oftentimes is at the start of the year, right, like January ends up being such a depressive time because people don't feel like they met their goals halfway in, and then they either let go and they get remotivated to try and fulfill their resolution of being healthy and being more health conscious, right? So would you recommend, like, a starting point, of course, is to visit with a provider and to then assess some of these markers that you're sharing to really start following a more holistically healthy path, and not just, sometimes you see all these different diets that are out there and they're like, consult with your physician, or all of those are, I would assume, go back to some of these foundational things that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, obviously symptoms are so important, symptoms and goals, because ultimately, you know how you're feeling. But sometimes we find things in people that are quite surprising. We work with an influencer gal. She's actually in Denver, and she is a CrossFitter, like a pro athlete, trains hard, very healthy. And we did some blood work for her, and she was pretty surprised to see that her inflammation marker was off the charts. So someone that's solely focused on their health still can have underlying issues that maybe aren't as noticed. So we're working with her to cut out some inflammation in her life and maybe try some different things to help. So even if you're not feeling something, there could be kind of something lurking there that you need to pay attention to.
That was a great transition into one of the items I was going to talk to you about, and that was, being someone who has over the last couple of years always worked with trainers, right? Particularly trainers that have focused around bodybuilding, and actually I think that's how I connected with you, because there was this strong partnership between the trainer and facility I was using and your brand. Yeah. But one of the things you often saw during COVID was the number of bodybuilders that just either had heart issues or passed away from all of the unhealthy highs and lows of their diets. And so I think that speaks to what you were just sharing, is sometimes when we think of health and when we see someone who's athletic and they're doing everything, that's not necessarily what's going on physically on the inside of them. And it's kind of, it's a layer underneath that's not seen by the eye. That takes me to something else, and that is this anti-supplements or anti-additional things, right? Like I feel like we're in such an environment where anything that's non-traditional medicine can be sometimes viewed as there's not necessarily anything that benefits to it at all, or that it could potentially be harmful. You see that a lot with steroids. I've heard it even around the discussion of peptides and things like that. What can you enlighten us about around what peptides actually are, and maybe try and help us debunk some of this noise that we're hearing around these things not being good for us?
Yeah, I mean, peptides are actually naturally occurring in our bodies. We have something like 7,000 of them running through us. And then, of course, the levels decline as we age. So that's why you see, that degradation and those symptoms. But we use peptide therapy to help signal your cells to perform specific tasks. So, there's actually very few side effects because they're naturally derived and work with your body to help them perform tasks. Peptides actually usually are very safe with very few side effects. I consider it a more holistic therapy, and I think they might get grouped in with things like steroids, but to me it's a very separate category. They are newer, and so it's confusing for people. They're actually not that new. Insulin was the first peptide, and people need insulin to live. It's a function that you can't live without. So there are also something like 80 FDA-approved peptides. So not all of them that we use and recommend are FDA-approved, but there are certainly a lot out there that are, and I think we will continue to see more and more, studies and FDA approvals on peptides.
And what are some of the ways that peptides benefit your body? So they're naturally occurring in our body for a variety of functions, I would assume. And what are some of those functions that they contribute to positively in our body?
Yeah, most every function, you name it. But weight loss is a big one, very popular right now. The ability to gain lean muscle, skin health, hair health, just general energy. So one of my favorite peptides, one that I take and recommend to my best friends, is something called a growth hormone releasing peptide. And it's not growth hormone, which you've probably heard, or maybe other people have heard. That's bad to take and dangerous to take. This tells your body to release more of its own growth hormone. So very separate from actually putting growth hormone in your body. But our levels of growth hormone are high when we're like middle school age. So as we age, those go down. So if you think about all the benefits around then, it's deeper sleep, faster recovery, the ability to build lean muscle, it's firmer skin, it's more energy. So that's kind of just an overall general one that I think is really great, and I love taking that one.
Yeah, and they're not, these supplements or additions, are they all with needle? Are these products that are, sometimes there's medicine that you can only take in a particular form, whether it's, or encouraged in a particular form because your body accepts it better. Are these peptides that we're talking about, are they items that you have to take as pills, supplements, or do you have to take them as IV? Or what's the general method around taking in some of these peptides?
Yeah, good question. And there's lots of different forms. A lot of times we do work with injections, but they're subcutaneous injections, so it's the tiny like insulin and needle. But there's also nasal sprays and capsules and creams. There's one peptide kind of called the holy grail of peptides because it helps with general healing and inflammation, but it can be either an injection or a capsule, and we kind of recommend which form to take based on what's going on or what you're trying to heal. So it varies.
Yeah, that makes sense. And You've got health providers that are in your network as well. These are physicians that have gone through the same studies and same understanding as who you would go to see for your medical needs.
Yeah, these are all prescriptions, so they're all doctor prescribed. I am not a medical person, it's not me. It's not me, so don't worry. But we have two really great medical advisors for Joy who have been practicing hormones and practicing peptide therapy, their whole career. And then we have nurse practitioners on staff who, screen patients and go through the health history. So we've got all the medical side covered for sure.
Absolutely love that. Thank you, Henry, for tuning in with us. And that quick comment led me to remember to tell you guys, if you are viewing this broadcast, then I hope you hit the share button on this video so others can see that we're live with Katie of Joy Wellness for Women. And if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to type them in the chat. These are questions that I've thought through that we want to ask Katie today, but it doesn't mean that it's the only questions that she can answer. So if you have thoughts or anything that that you want answered, or things that you've come across personally, you can feel free to type them into the comment section here as we're streaming this on KUHS Denver. Now, Katie, one thing that we also share together is our interest for all things self-care. I myself have labeled myself as an individual who embodies this. Not only have I been able to lead some workshops and publish a book around it, but I've also been involved with other organizations that empower others to lead healthier lives through self-care. Your business and your concept is all around self-care as well, and over the last month or two I've even seen a strong emphasis from you all on your social platforms around this. What can you speak to around self-care that we want to highlight today?
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to say self-care is not selfish. Yes. And it's also not just, getting a mani-pedi, which sometimes it is that, but self-care, it can actually be hard work. Yes. But, for me personally, I know that I have enough going on in my life and enough, goals and mission in life to know that if I'm not taking care of myself, none of it will work. I mean, to be a good mom, to be a business, owner, to be a good person and a good friend, like I need my time and I need my self-care and I need to evolve. Otherwise I just, couldn't get through the day. So I think for me, it's very important, and I think as women, sometimes we tend to think that taking care of everyone else first is what we should be doing, but I don't think that's the right way to look at it.
Yes, yeah, you're spot on. We have this idea, and we have this guilt that we carry when we do start taking care of ourselves over others, where it's, I should be doing this for someone else as opposed to us, and it's you're spot on, and I've even done talks around how it's not selfish, it's necessary, right? Like, and it's more than the skin level. Often when we talk about that hair and nails, I mean, I love it, don't get me wrong, like I am in the beauty industry, this is stuff that I thoroughly enjoy, but there is a difference between what is on the outside and again what you're doing to actually feed yourself and feed your soul internally, and it's things like we were just sharing right before we hopped into self-care. What does your body actually need, and how can you fill that need and make sure that you are holistically well and not just externally well?
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah. So you started up this business, right? And you are the co-founder of Joy. And you also shared with us that your husband leads the men's division, right? Like the blogs for men. But where did this idea come from? Were you just someone who was already in the athletic or fitness industry, and then you decided to jump in on this? Did you have your own experience that led you into starting up, or how did this idea come to life?
Yeah, I definitely, it was definitely through my own experience and me and my husband's experience and what happened in our personal lives and our marriage. When I was single in my early 30s, I felt like I had all the time for self-care and I really was good at it. I had the resources, I had this great group of girlfriends, and it was a great time in my life, and I felt good and I looked good. But then after I got married, we worked on starting a family right away, and it really changed my life dramatically because we had a tough 6 years with lots of miscarriages and IVF treatments. And so once I did successfully have my two babies, I woke up kind of at in my early 40s, and didn't recognize myself. I really felt like crap. I definitely didn't look good. So for me, it was, a decision of, is this the new me? Or do I do the really hard work to change and to be who I want to be? And so I decided to do the hard work, but really what also helped me was finding support and finding ways to kind of help my body feel like it was working right again. And after I did that, I was really amazed with the progress, and I just felt like women in general were so underserved by not having access to these things. So that's when Joy was born, with the hope to just help women who want to do it all.
And thank you so much for sharing that about your personal journey and the struggles that you faced before becoming your own business owner and empowering other women to do the same. But I think you nailed it when you just said other women haven't necessarily had an outlet for this, right? Like, especially even more recently, I would say in the last decade, we're seeing more and more of us that are doing strength-based training. You're seeing women lift. You're seeing us understand that muscles are not just for men, and that we should also be doing our part in building up our body and ourselves. What is, if I were to ask you what a challenge has been in conveying that message to women, what has been that challenge? Like, is this falling on deaf ears as you're telling people? Sometimes people know that they should be healthy, they should be taking care of themselves, but they don't do that, right? Like, they don't do that until something happens that really triggers that for them. And so, how do you overcome that? Them having to go through something to really take the reins on themselves and their life.
It's hard. I mean, when I was growing up, it was all about the aerobics and the fat-free, high sugar, carb stuff. So yeah, it's a totally different ballgame now. We know that muscle is really the organ for longevity. So we're going to age better. We're going to feel better. We're going to be able to process our food better if we have that muscle mass. So lifting weights is so important for our metabolic health and for how we're going to live in our older years, and eating the protein to support that muscle is very important. So personally, I've switched to less cardio and more strength training, and I love it. One of the challenges that we've also faced is trying to let women know that we need testosterone, and there's a lot of things in our life that will decrease our testosterone. For instance, being on birth control for a long time, which a lot of women will decrease our testosterone, and then just other environmental factors. But testosterone is not just for men, and it really helps women feel better, have more mental clarity. It helps with inflammation. It helps you with the muscle mass, which is, important. So that's been a challenge, is kind of breaking the myth that that's just for men.
Yes.
And that women don't need it.
Yeah. It is. You answered it before I even asked it, and that was, how does it support women and not just men, right? Because when you think of testosterone, you really do. You think of like hairy, big men. You don't think of us women needing that, but we do, and it's lost over time from our bodies and for other factors that we may or may not be aware of internally or happening. So, what are some of those signs? Are there visible signs to someone that they may be low on testosterone, or that they should get it checked out even?
Yeah, I mean, so certainly the ability to not, like if you're working out in the gym and you're lifting weights and you're eating your protein but not able to build that lean muscle, that's a sign. Another big sign is your sex drive, which turns out is actually a very good indicator of how healthy you are. One of our medical advisors talks about a study that says if you have regular, healthy sex, then there's some component to longevity, like there's a 50% reduction in all cause mortality. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly in the study what it is, but a healthier sex life, a healthier libido leads to a healthier, longer life. So that's a big sign too, your libido.
Yeah. Okay. The funny that's funny. So I went to a therapist, a massage therapist. This was like over a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and she was telling me how she'd had these recent testosterone. I don't know if it was injections or supplements that she was on, but she is like, I am feeling the friskiest I have in a really in a long time. Like if there is any guy in my track. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, there you go. Well, good. She's gonna have a long, healthy life then. Good for her.
Long, healthy life, for sure. Now, Joy Wellness is a form of telemedicine. Is that right? And
yeah, we launched. We kind of were concocting this all during COVID, so we actually had some regenerative medicine clinics that were brick and mortar. They shut down. So yeah, we went telemedicine, thinking it would be easy. It's not easy, but we are licensed in all 50 states, so we have access to ship everywhere, which is great. And we do all of our appointments over Zoom, like we're doing this radio show, which is crazy.
That is super crazy. You're spot on. That's and you're fast in your delivery and your services. I can attest to that. Are people using insurance when they work with you, or is that also something that that's more of like a factor in whether or not they're able to work with you?
Yeah, we right now do not take insurance. We're working on trying to put a program in place for some particular peptides, the weight loss peptides that are more expensive, to try to put in some insurance options, but we're not there yet. But in general, what we do is not typically covered by insurance agencies. You know, our labs and our treatments are, in general, preventative, proactive, and that's not what insurance companies usually cover.
That's true. Yeah, most of the time you have to be falling apart, then you go to a physician, and then they tell you to go get the lab work instead of knowing that there could be something wrong and kind of doing that proactively. So there are advantages, and that's, I think there's a saying I recently read, right, like where health is, you pay for it now, like you pay right now something that basically takes care of your wellness instead of you're paying for the illness later on, right? And so
totally.
Sometimes paying something up front could save you in the long run those emergency room visits or anything else that could sprout up as well.
Yeah, that's very true. I love this one quote. I don't know who it's by, someone very wise and probably old, but it's something like, a man who has his health has 1,000 dreams, but a man who has health challenges has but one.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so different when you've gone through a health scare or something in your life where you really grow to appreciate the life you have, for one, but your whole focus is on trying to get better and in trying to be well, as opposed to having that just be a function of your everyday life and not having to deal with that in such the magnitude of having a disease or an illness that sprouts out.
Right, exactly.
For sure. So you are on all social media. Is that, where can people find you? On Instagram, on Facebook? What are some of your handles that we can encourage others to find you at?
Yeah, I hang out a lot on Instagram, and our IG is at Joy Women's Wellness, and we spell joy a little funky. It's JOI, and also our website is choosejoy.co.
Yeah, and why is it that it's spelled with an I and not a Y?
I don't know. We paid some fun folks in Denver to come up with a name, and I saw that, and they gave us a whole list of options, and I was like, that's it. That's the feeling I want, and that's it. So, that's what we went for.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's totally funny. You're also on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. Is that under your company or as Katie Whalen?
We're on LinkedIn as both, Katie Whalen, Katy, and then YouTube is at Joy Women's Wellness as well. There might be some random things at the end of that. I'm not sure.
Right. Additional things. Just go to the search bar, type it in, and it'll hopefully pop up with the logo. Now, you do a lot on Instagram, and I know that was a platform that you highlighted in the ways that they can connect with you. On Instagram, you're doing lives, you do videos. Some of that content is educational, yes?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important is, certainly we have our list of things we do and the treatments that we offer, but really what we're trying to do is promote a lifestyle, and that's, making little small changes. Sometimes they can be, or a lot of times they can be little free things that you can do. So we're trying to encourage people to just kind of live their best life, and so that's a little bit of what we preach every day.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the advice along the way. It's little nuggets that people can learn from, and facts that you're spreading. And we touched on a lot today. We touched on menopause, perimenopause. We've even touched on peptides, testosterone, the needs to check your blood levels. We've also shared the importance and significance of self-care and in putting ourselves and our well-being first so we can take care of those that are important to us, whether they're your significant others, your kiddos. What are some other things that we can share with our audience, or things that you were hoping that we can highlight on today's segment?
I think it's important for people to really take control of their own health journey and really figure out what's right for them. I see a lot of people that just kind of have a symptom and they pass it off with an excuse like, oh, I'm aging, or oh, I'm a mom now, so this or that. So I think what I like to tell people is, as we age, things will happen, and that's fine. But it's important to listen to your body, and it's important to change along with it. The things that you did when you were 20 or 30 are probably not going to work as well for you when you're 40 or 50, etc. Yeah. So I think it's important to listen to your body and evolve and give it the care it needs.
Well, and I feel like, gosh, today has been one of those days that we talk a little about age and how much people overemphasize aging, and that it's okay for you to fall apart, or that there's no significance for you once you start aging. And I view it as, age is strictly a number, period. Someone who is 13, and I've met folks that are like this, where they've had 6 heart surgeries by 13 years of age, and you're like, Jesus, I don't know the trajectory of where they're going to be, versus someone who's 80, who's older in that instance, right? And so it really isn't something that's defined by the number, but it goes back to what you were sharing, and that's as you mature in life, you should be adapting, and adapting to how your body changes in those different phases. It doesn't mean that you fall apart.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're doing everything older now, aren't we? Like getting married older, having babies older. Like, yeah. I mean, at least I look at my life now, and going back to what you said earlier, thinking menopause was so far off and you don't have to worry about it. Like, life goes fast. So I ultimately want to live, I want to live my older years and feel good and be able to do the things that I want to do when I have that chance.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something else that I read recently, and that was, they were talking about this mindset of when we get to middle age, right, or when you get to that point of the 50 marker, and you're older, when you're thinking that, right? Instead, it's changing your mindset that your middle age is actually your 30s, right? Like, if you look at age expectancy and lifespan, that happens a lot sooner than what we think, and we don't start taking care of ourselves until a lot later in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point.
I know. You're like, I guess I am like well over my first half of my life now. Like, thanks for that depressive moment. But the idea is what you were sharing, and that is, you want to live the life that you do have for as long as you have it, as healthy as possible, and enjoy it, and rather than focus on trying to get better, trying to be recover from something. You're going through the journey, and you're creating memories and hopefully focusing on other positive things along the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, good. So if people have questions and they wanted to touch base with you, the best thing that they can do is go to choosejoy.com, or is there a phone number that we want to direct them to, or an email that they can shoot out over to?
ChooseJoy.co for a consultation. Also, yeah, you can shoot me an email. I am personally at Katy, Katy, at choosejoy.co, or our general info line is just info@choosejoy.co. Yeah, so either way.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed sharing you with our viewers, our listeners. For those of you that are just now hopping on, we're live on KUHS Denver. We have Katy with us. Katy is the co-founder of Joy Wellness. Joy Women's Wellness. I'm gonna get it right like once I like
you got it.
Close to ending. Choose Joy, JOI.co. They're also on all things social media. They're on Instagram and Facebook. They're on LinkedIn and YouTube. Follow them and learn a little bit more about some of the topics that you don't think apply to you that likely do. Whether you're a woman or if you are a male, they've got the male side of things. You can also find that online as well. Katy's touched on a number of items for us today, and I hope it just sparked some thoughts that answered some questions that you might have. Maybe if you've been facing something in particular that you thought was okay, and now you're like, it's not okay because some of what they're talking about I'm feeling or I've faced. Please reach out and get some advice and direction. It never hurts to ask those questions and hear from some of their experts along the way. Now, I hate to close out this early, but I don't want to keep you if we don't want to touch on anything else. So I will encourage others to reach out to you by email or directly on your social channels to ask you those personal questions that they have. If you ever do have a personal question that you're not comfortable typing into the chat, you can always DM our page and we'll get it over to our guests to be able to answer that to you privately as well. And if you're seeing this in the afternoon or evening, then I want to thank you for engaging with us and ask you to let us know that you watched this on replay and share it out to your network. We'll be back here next Friday, and next Friday's guest is Keelan Thomas. Keelan owns her own online retail boutique, Garbed in Glittering Grace. She's also a mama that is doing a lot on her plate, and she'll be sharing about her entrepreneurial journey and how that's looked in the virtual world. I just noticed that as I was sharing it. I love that you offer telemedicine, and then here we have another company that's virtual entirely, and you're showing people that you can do this work-life balance and have be a mom and also be a business owner and a career woman and do it in a way that fits your schedule. It's not the traditional brick and mortar that most people think about.
Yeah, I love that too. So thank you for that technology and COVID maybe.
Yeah, great. Thanks for like all of the above, for sure. And with that, I will thank you again, Katy, for being on here with us. I'm going to go ahead and start closing us out, and I hope you enjoy a beautiful weekend and have an amazing time with your husband and your kids.
Thank you, Juliet. So lovely to talk to you.